Was jamming out to some Kid and Play videos last night, refreshing my memory, watching several of their videos on YouTube. Kid and Play, remember Kid and Play from back in the day? I remember somebody who saw Kid and Play, actually in person, early 90s. They were hanging out in Memphis. These two guys, Christopher Reed and Christopher Martin. Christopher Reed was Kid. Christopher Martin was Play. It's kind of funny how these memories come back on you. Remember, somebody was telling me about that about, gosh, it's been about 23, 24, 25 years ago. They had a DJ, Mark Eastman, DJ Wiz. Reed and Martin, they met in high school. They were in rival high school bands. One was in a group called the Turnout Brothers, and I believe it was Play who was in a group called Super Lovers. And they teamed up and they formed a duo called the Fresh Force Crew, became Kid and Play, hooked up with a producer named Herbie Love Bug Azor, who was producing Salt and Pepper. He discovered Salt and Pepper. Azor wrote Push It, their first big hit. He was going out with Salt back in the mid to late 80s, dating her. He wrote another big hit for Salt and Pepper, Let's Talk About Sex, back in the fall of 1991. Remember watching that video, going back down memory lane, down the time tunnel. Remember watching that video on MTV back in the fall of 91. Can't believe it's been, gosh, almost 30 years ago. Well, 30 years ago on this fancy playlist back in 1989. Remember those old school rappers from back in the day, watching them on Video Soul and Video Vibrations, and some on MTV. LL Cool J, Ice-T doing Colors back in 1988. Como D, Wild Wild West. Yeah, that was cool. Remember that one? Wild Wild West. Children's Story by Slick Rick. I'm sure there's some more that'll come to me later on. This record, Too High, sounds a little bit like a Belle Div DeVoe, Belle Biv or Belle Div DeVoe record. Great beat, great pop beat to it, great pop background, to some heavy rapping, to some, well, borderline, at least borderline hardcore rapping. These guys, Kid and Play, they can throw down some rap. And their biggest hit, well, relatively speaking, they were more popular on the hip hop and the rap charts. Never had a big crossover hit. Their biggest Billboard Hot 100 entry was Ain't Gonna Hurt Nobody. They sampled or borrowed from Bricks' Ain't Gonna Hurt Nobody to Get On Down, which came out back in '78. Kids in Play Ain't Gonna Hurt Nobody went to number 51 on Billboard's Hot 100. They were in some films as well. You probably remember those house party films. TLC was in House Party 3. Gosh, TLC. I go back. When I think of TLC, I go back to their first hit record. Back in the spring of 1992. Ain't Too Proud to Beg. That was the same era when R. Kelly came out with his first hit record. R. Kelly in Public Announcements with She's Got That Vibe, and Joe Public with Live and Learn. That was some rad stuff right there. Reed was in an episode of Full House, and I forgot about that. Now, he continued to act. He acted in an episode of Full House, which I was a fan of Full House, second generation fan of Full House, back in the mid to late 2000s when it was in syndication with Nick at Night. But he also acted in another TV show, I believe it was called Sister Sister Reed, and that was in the late 90s. Later became a born, no, it was not Reed, it was Martin. Martin was the one who became a born again Christian and later became a college professor in North Carolina. There's life after being a hip hop star, after being a rock star, no doubt about it. Top 40 Extra on my fancy playlist. Trying to think if there's anything else I need to add about Kid and Play. Oh, yes, one other thing. I didn't know this. Remember the group Super Lover that Play was in before he hooked up with Christopher Reed? Herbie Lovebug Azor. He was a member of Super Lover. So these guys go back. Top 40 Extra on my fancy playlist, July 30th, 1989. Kid and Play with Too High.